through kind of a hyperactive imagination, and that's what I do for a living, is come up with these stories.
But you were a lawyer yourself. Why did you leave the law?
Well, I was about to starve. I mean, it was not very profitable. I was a lawyer in a small town in Mississippi and did it for 10 years, and here's what happened. About halfway through, I was 30 years old. I got the bug to write, and I started writing what would become A Time to Kill. And once I had this dream of writing full time, I didn't know if it would ever happen. The law really got boring. And then suddenly, with my second book in 1990 of The Firm, I could walk away and write full time. And it happened very, very fast, and I've been writing ever since. I mean, it was just, I didn't plan to say, I didn't wake up one day and say, okay, I'm tired of being a lawyer, I'm going to start writing books. It was a gradual move into another field, and it's been a whole lot more fun than practicing law.
So you and I have been doing what we are doing respectively for about the same number of years.
Well, you have 36 years?
36
okay,
years.
This is book number 35. So
how about that?
Okay, I'm going to publish 2 books. I'll catch you next year. You'll be 37. I'll publish 1 book, a kid's book in the spring. I'll come back a year from now with the next novel. That'll be 37.
We'll be book. Tell me about the kids' book.
It's a series I started about 5 years ago. It's called Theodore Boone, Kid Lawyer. And it's about a kid who's 13 years old. He'll always be 13, I think. He's an only child. Both of his parents are lawyers in a small town, small fictional town. And the first book was called Theodore Boone, Kid Lawyer. He's best-selling of all books, A Time to Kill.
So what's your advice to young writers really longing to get printed?
Well, don't start submitting before you're finished. And that's a common mistake. And don't
what
stop.
People do sort of halfway through, or a paragraph.
Yeah, halfway through, or they submit the first draft, and you can't submit the first draft. You've got to finish it, let it sit for a while. The most important thing is to have somebody who really loves you read the book. It could be your spouse, a friend, a teacher, whatever, parent. Somebody who wants you to succeed is going to be honest with you. And if you have more than one, you're lucky. Let them read it, and then go back and redo it and work on it. And before you start submitting, so often there's such a rush to get published that young writers get in too big of a hurry, and they submit stuff that's not quite ready.
So how much did you change A Time to Kill from first writing until it was finally accepted?
I did not rewrite much of it. I cut a lot of it. I threw in everything but the kitchen sink. I didn't know what I was doing. I was a lawyer. That was my first thing I'd ever written. And so the manuscript was 900 pages long. It was very too long. And I had a great editor who finally bought the book, a guy named Bill Thompson, who also discovered Stephen King. He cut a third of it. And it's still too long.
John Grisham, his new book, I assure you, is not too long. It's titled Rogue Lawyer.
Family protested.
Oh, first of all, thank you so much. Sycamore Row, when A Time to Kill came out in 89, and again, as I said earlier, was not picked up until the early 1990s. The movie came out in 1996. The movie was very well done. It was a popular film and all that. Over the years, when people can get close enough, they'll say something like something always very nice. Just like you, just very nice people out there who enjoy the books. But they'll say, "Hey, I really like all your books, but that first one is really special. Time to Kill. When are you going to do it again? When are you going to bring Jake back? And I for 20 years, I've thought about going back to Ford County, back to those characters that I love, because Jake is very autobiographical. That's the way I practice law in Mississippi. And I would always say, well, I've got to have the story first. I've got to wait till the story hits me. And so the story hit one day, thinking about Jake and the characters back there. And the story really took place, and so I wrote Sycamore Row and published it 2 years ago. The book last year was Gray Mountain, and I wrote that book because I became aware. I live in Virginia now, and some of the worst mountaintop removal coal mining takes place in Southwest Virginia. And flying over the area, I was astonished at the level of destruction, and I began doing research and was able to put together a novel that would highlight the problems in Appalachia with coal mining. As far as movies, again, they're very hard to make these days. I'm not sure. We don't have a deal for Gray Mountain. There's a deal for Sycamore Row. It's controlled by Warner Brothers. I don't know what they're going to do. I'm not in charge of that. You know what? The movie business these days is so
crazy.
It's crazy and frustrating.
Yeah.
So I don't even worry about it anymore. I sell the film rights and hope it happens.
You were on this program for Sycamore Row 2 years ago, and just to bring you up to date, in 1998, a Texas death row inmate, Martin Garul, escaped from the Huntsville prison complex in Texas. It was the first successful escape from death row since 1934, and John Grisham has a brand new novel.
Thank God for the internet. You can check these facts in Google so fast.
But you know,
we just read that. It's a great story. I've been to that prison on 2 occasions in Texas. How they escape, I'll never understand that. But it's a true story. The guy got out. They never caught him. They found him dead under a bridge. I'm reading right here from Google, so we know. But I'm inspired by having a brand new story to write about.
Isn't that great?
Thank you, Diane.
Tell me how you feel about the death sentence.
I'm opposed to the death penalty for a bunch of reasons. First of all, morally opposed, because I don't think that, the state has the right to kill people. If killing is wrong, how can we sanction killing? If you look at the way it is applied, it is so unfair. It varies from state to state. It varies by race, by the race of the victim, by all these, And the system is so broken, the criminal justice system. There are very few guarantees that protect. I'm on the board of the Innocence Project in New York. We're up to 350 DNA exonerations, and a bunch of those are guys off of death row. I wrote a book about Ron Williamson, the only nonfiction book I've written, The Innocent Man, that came out 10 years ago. Ron was on death row in Oklahoma. He's completely innocent, later proven by DNA. The cops had bungled the case, so the prosecutors had bungled the case. He's on death row, and they send for him one day to take him over to the warden's office for this very dramatic meeting with the warden and all his little minions, and then he reads his death warrant. And he asks Ron, what are you supposed to do with your body? And Ron says, I don't care. Send me to my sister after you kill me. But I mean, he came within 5 days of being executed off death row, and completely innocent. So I've read so many.
Even the most heinous crimes is what people always say. Even then, you don't believe in the death penalty?
I don't believe the state has the authority, moral or otherwise, to kill people. No, I don't. Luckily, I have not been the victim of a horrible crime. I'm not sure how I would handle that. But as a matter of law and rule of society, I don't think that we have the right to impose our wishes to kill people on society.
All right, and let's go to Flushing, Michigan.
Policing in the United States. And it's just a recipe for disaster. So thank you so much for, handling that topic in the kind of audience that you have.
Thank you.
All right. And the other issues you deal with is mass incarceration, which President Obama is certainly.
We've lost our minds. Sebastian makes that observation in the book. When we have these tough laws passed by tough politicians, 3 strikes, you're out, whatever, to the war on drugs, the war on power, we're losing all these wars. We have 1 million young black men in prison for nonviolent drug offenses. And what happens is that once they are convicted, they are felons, they get out. So you can't discriminate against them legally under the law because they are African American, but you can because they're felons. So they can't get jobs, they can't get benefits, they can't. They're branded by society. We have thousands of innocent people in prison. I learned that when I wrote The Innocent Man. Okay, I learned that working with the Innocence Project in New York. There's thousands of innocent people in prison. Some have been on death row, not very many, fortunately, but they're there. I know they're there. aside from the innocent people, there are tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people in prison who are serving sentences that are far too harsh and far too long.
And how much of that is because of...
Well, that's another issue, the privatization. The problem is it goes back to the laws. And so I was in the state legislature in Mississippi 30 years ago, and it's pretty easy as a politician to see, the laws that come up, they're proposed, and they're tougher, and they provide, tougher sentences for drug dealers. And it's easy to sit there and vote and just pile on these tough laws with mandatory sentences. We've taken the discretion away from judges. They have very little discretion. These sentences are mandatory, and they're very long. And so you end up what we're realizing now, finally waking up in Washington, both sides, that this is a very, very expensive operation we have here, our penal system. As our prison population ages because of these long sentences, it becomes more and more expensive. And so we're trying to, we're having the first dialogue now about maybe cutting back on the number of people we put in prison.
If you had stayed in politics?
No, I was in the state legislature in Mississippi, and one of 122. I had a very small voice. And back then, it probably the same way now, probably the same way in most states. You had to serve a long time to have any real seniority or impact upon the legislation, and I just didn't have the patience for it.
All right, to Lisa.
System is come from the innocent man.
Sure. The innocent man was a real eye-opener for me as a writer, but also as a lawyer. When I practiced law for 10 years, I had a lot of criminal clients. I never had a single defendant who I thought was wrongfully convicted. And where I practiced at the time, I knew the policemen, they were straight up. I knew the prosecutors, they were straight up. The judge, we had a couple of seasoned old judges who, you better not come into court with some half-baked evidence or fabricated or some lying snitch or whatever. The judges wouldn't put up with it. I mean, it's a real clean system. And I think that's the way it is in most places. But I was sort of naive. Once I got into Ron Williamson's case out of Ada, and began realizing all the things that went wrong with his conviction, I realized that the same factors are there in almost every wrongful conviction. Whether it's inadequate defense counsel, it's junk science, it's jailhouse snitches, false confessions are all there. It was a real eye-opener for me. It's not just Ada. It's a lot. There are a lot of places like that.
And you're listening to the Diane Rehm Show. As I sit here, I think about your energy, your imagination, the way your mind works. What were you like as a little kid?
A daydreamer. My mother says I spent a lot of time daydreaming, and I read a lot because of her. And, very normal childhood. We grew up in various towns in the Deep South. And
How about your dad?
My dad was, when I was born in Arkansas, my dad was a cotton farmer, and he got away from that as soon as he could. He had a house full of kids, and we left the farm and never looked back. And he worked really hard when I was a kid and was always working, wasn't around a whole lot. I mean, he was always home every night, but he had, he worked double shifts because he had a house full of kids. But it was a very warm, loving family environment. We were always in church. The church was the extension of the family. We were active in schools. Even though we moved a lot, I think moving really helped shape the personality because, made friends real easily. And it was a wonderful childhood.
Good student?
Pretty good student. Never, top of the class. Preferred athletics over academics. Loved sports. Played a lot of sports. Dreamed of playing, like every kid, for the Cardinals. I didn't quite make it. But yeah, it was a good way to go. Never thought about writing. Again, we were avid readers, but the writing came... came later in life. Came out of nowhere.
And what about you and your wife, children?
Mm-hmm.
How many?
Our son is 32. He's a lawyer in Charlottesville, Virginia.
Does he like the law?
He does so far. He's been doing it for a few years. And our daughter lives in Raleigh. Lisa, if you're still listening, our daughter lives in Raleigh, teaches school in Raleigh. And she has, we've just found out recently that in February, we're going to become grandparents. So the first grandchild's on the way, and we're very excited about that.
Well, your next novel may have to have a grandchild in it.
I'm sure this little kid's going to inspire me in ways I've never dreamed of. He's already very much an inspiration. He's 4 months away.
Well, everybody is going to wait for your next one, and have you begun it?
No, I'm halfway through with the next Theodore Boone book. That'll come out next spring sometime. I've got 2 really good ideas for the next novel. I'm playing around with them. I had a great idea last month that I typed up a 2-page treatment for another book out of Ford County. Johnny, if you're still down in Dothan listening to us, it's a Ford County novel. I thought it was going to be brilliant, and Renee gave it the thumbs down. She didn't like it, so I said, okay.
Your wife.
Oh, yeah.
She's your first reader.
If she didn't like them, they don't give it for her. So she was right looking back. So
what do you think she'll think about this guy escaping from the death penalty?
You know, she's so used to seeing stories like this, and I get all excited, and I drive her crazy talking about it. She's listened to that stuff for 35 years, so she's not going to get excited about it.
We'll see what happens. John Grisham, always good to see you.
I'll see you next year for year 37 and book 37, right?
Promise.
October of next year.
Promise.
Book it.
Look forward to it. John Grisham, the book is titled Rogue Lawyer, and thanks all for listening. I'm Diane Reed.